Hi kids, this is Pastor Laura and I have a story for you today. It's a story from our Old Testament and it's about a young person hero. It's about the shepherd boy named David and when he fought a great big giant named Goliath, and how somehow, because God was with him, he was able to do a very big thing. So I want you to remember, when you're struggling to do a very big thing, that God is with you and you can have the courage to go ahead and do it. Of our story, David and Goliath. And this is retold by Catherine Storr, and the pictures are by Christ Molan. Took me a while to read that. Again, we can find this story in our Old Testament, and I will post the reference on our YouTube channel description. All right, here we go. This is from the People in the Bible Through Stories and Pictures series, which I think is out of print, but still worth reading. There's our beginning. All right. One day God spoke to Samuel, the high priest, and he said, "Saul, the king of Israel, does not obey my commandments. I am going to choose another king to rule instead of him. Go on a journey into the country. Near Bethlehem you will find a man called Jesse. I have chosen a new king from among his sons." And Samuel said, "Lord God, how can I do this? If Saul hears of my journey, he will kill me." God said, "Take an animal with you and tell people that you are going to make a sacrifice to the Lord." The next day Samuel journeyed toward Bethlehem. When the people from the town saw him, they were troubled. They asked, "Do you come in peace?" And Samuel said, "I come in peace, to make a sacrifice to the Lord." He called Jesse and his sons to the sacrifice, and when he saw Eliab the oldest, he said, "This must be the man I have come to find." But God said, "No, this is not the right man." Next, Samuel saw Abinadab, but he was not the man God had chosen. And then Jesse brought another son, Shammah, and all the sons in his house for Samuel to see, but not one was the right one. Samuel asked, "Have you no more sons?" Jesse said, "There is one more, the youngest. He is out on the hills tending the sheep." And Samuel said, "Send for him." And here he is. Looks kind of young manish, but still not all grown up. And Jesse sent up to the hills, and David, his youngest son, came down. He was young and handsome to look at. And when Samuel saw him, he knew that this was the boy God had chosen. He took a horn of oil and anointed David as the man who would one day be king of Israel. It happened that at this time Saul was troubled by an evil spirit, and he became very sad and miserable, and he could not sleep. And his servant said, "A cunning player on the harp would drive away this evil spirit, and you would feel better." And Saul said, "Very well, find me such a man." A servant said, "One of Jesse's sons plays the harp, and he is very brave and very good looking." There is the troubled king. Saul sent messengers to Jesse to ask that David should come down to him. And when Jesse heard the message, he sent bread and wine and a kid with David as gifts for King Saul. And kid, he means a goat baby. As soon as Saul saw David, he loved him. David played his harp, and his music calmed Saul. The evil spirit left him. A great war was being fought between the Israelites and the Philistines. The two armies were encamped on two mountains on opposite sides of a valley. One of the Philistines was a giant called Goliath. He was very tall and immensely strong. He wore armor of brass, and his spear was as thick as a young tree. He called out to the Israelites, "Send out a man to fight me in single combat." But the Israelites were afraid. No one would go out to fight Goliath. Jesse's 3 oldest sons were in the army, fighting with Saul against the Philistines. One day Jesse said to David, "Take this measure of corn and these 10 loaves and go to the camp. And give these cheeses to the captain. Find out how your brothers are." Early the next morning, David went to the camp. He heard Goliath shouting across the valley, and he asked his brothers, "What reward is there for the man who will go out to fight this roaring giant?" David's oldest brother was angry and said, "Why didn't you stay in the hills with your sheep? You just came down here to see the battle." And David asked other people about Goliath. Saul heard that a young man was saying that someone should fight Goliath, and he sent for David, and David said to him, "I will go out and fight this Philistine." There's Saul out on the battlefield. And Saul said, "You can't fight Goliath. He has been fighting for years, and you are only a boy." And David said, "For a long time I have been guarding my father's sheep. Once a lion took a lamb, but I made him drop it out of his mouth, and then I took him by the beard and killed him. I know that I can kill this Philistine who is defying the army of the living God." When he heard that, Saul said, "Go then, and God go with you." He gave David his own armor, a brass helmet, a coat of mail, and a sword. But David said, "I have never fought in armor. I think I would do better without it." He took it off, and he went to the battlefield to meet Goliath. On his way, David stopped to pick up some stones. As soon as Goliath saw the young David, he said, "Am I a dog that you come to fight me without a sword, with only sticks?" And there he is. He's a tough guy. "Come nearer, and I will kill you and feed your body to the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field." And David said, "You come to fight me with a sword and a spear, but I come in the name of the Lord God." And then he put a stone into a sling and hurled it at Goliath. It hit the Philistine on the forehead, so that he fell on his face on the earth. David ran up and stood on Goliath's body. He took Goliath's sword and cut off the giant's head. And then the Israelite army stood up and shouted. They chased the Philistine army up the valley as far as the gates of Ekron. There they are, heading off. Sorry about the camera. Trying to turn one last page. After the battle, Abner, the Israelite captain, brought David before Saul in Jerusalem. David had with him Goliath's head and his armor. And Saul asked David, "Whose son are you, young man?" And David said, "I am the son of Jesse of Bethlehem." One of Saul's sons, called Jonathan, saw how handsome and brave David was. He knew that he would love this young man as if he were his brother. Afterwards, David came to live in the king's palace, and he loved Jonathan too. There we have a map for those who love maps. It's the Bible lands of the Old Testament, and we can see there Bethlehem is really a smaller town, And there we see Jerusalem. Jerusalem would have been where the king stayed in his castle or in his palace. And Bethlehem was where David was from. And those of you that remember your Christmas story know that Bethlehem was there because Mary and Joseph went there because they were of the house and lineage of David. So this is a great Bible story to look up in our Bibles and read. And one of my favorite youth people, Gary Pacook, talks about how when we learn to do things like pray and share and say thanks and worship, it's like we are collecting the stones we need to deal with the battles of our life. So glad you came to hear about this story of David and Goliath.